Hey, what's up, guys? This is Brian at Whisper Status 74. Welcome to the community. Welcome to the channel. If this is the first time you are seeing me, please consider liking and subscribing. We are real tech for real people. Today's video will be a discussion and tech therapy vid on Sony's 2022 lineup of OLEDs and LEDs. Thank you so much for joining me.
I've seen things people wouldn't believe.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. We are looking at the Sony 2022 TV lineup, their OLED lineup, their mini LED lineup, their LED lineup. I'll be saying lineup a lot. Each manufacturer did amazing this year. Sony, LG, Samsung, Hisense and TCL are the big players. We'll cover each of them individually in individual videos. This will also be not only a discussion, but a tech therapy video, as there is some therapy needed in this lineup this year. There's things that I am very excited about, things that I love, things that I'm all right with, things that I don't love, and things that I flat out don't like. We'll cover all of that today. Firstly, we'll start with the Z9K 8K mini LED. It's the top of the food chain. Last year's Z9J was considered the flagship, right along the very popular A90J Master Series, which carried over to this year to some degree, which is part of what I don't love. But you had the Z9J last year and A90 sitting together. Right now they have the Z9K as their flagship. Me being an LED lover at heart, I'm happy to see the continued effort in mini LED. So I'm happy to see that's there. You have the Z9K, you have the X95K, and the X90K. We're going to stay at those three, that top to mid lineup. Anything below that tends to be very samey from last year, which is a little bit how I feel about the X90K this year, similar to last year's X90J. Just a guess there. So you have the Z9K, the X95, the X90. The X90 is still a traditional LED. The X95 and the Z9K are mini LED. And what's most exciting about those is the backlight master drive, which we have not seen since the Sony Z9G and Z9D. But we're going to get into all of that. Their OLED lineup, the Sony A90J Master Series, carries over, and its most popular sizes being 55, 65, 83. And then you have the A80K, which is going to cover the rest of the lineup, 55, 65, 77. And then you have, what's the name of it? I keep losing the names of these, but we have the A95K, which is the Qd-Oled, but the A90K is the one that is going to focus on the 42 and 40 inch sizes, and I do have an issue there, but you also have, again, the A80K. Amazing lineup here. We have to talk a little bit about Sony's last year's lineup to talk about this year and what I love and what I don't love. Last year, Sony came right out, A90J Master Series, 83 inches, beautiful, brighter heatsink. It stood alone, completely alone versus any other OLED outside of Panasonic, which has already had a heatsink. Before I begin, these videos are rather long. They'll be about 20 minutes. There is a tech therapy aspect to it. Sony's lineup last year, the A90J was king. It was, in my opinion, the best overall display last year. We did talk about 4K remaining and 4K showing up at a brighter, more vibrant panel. The G1 from LG didn't have a heatsink and also did not have an 83-inch size. Something we're going to come back to with the sizes that we have here. So the A90J does carry over. The A80J was extremely popular, came out of nowhere. What I liked about the A80J is it had 98 or 95% of the picture quality of the A90J. They had a 77-inch size. They were affordable, relatively affordable, right out of the box, or out of the gate, I should say. and they were absolutely gorgeous. Where the year before that, with the AAH and the A9G hovering over it, kind of crippled the AAH a little bit, which it shouldn't, because the AAH was amazing, but didn't have a 77-inch size. So these sizes carrying over do play into this conversation. I think it's important. You do cripple one or the other by not having certain sizes available. I understand why they don't. So as we demo, like it was frozen for a second. So as we get back into even with Sony's lineup with the the X90, keep forgetting the name of it, the A90K being smaller, you have the 42 and the 48 inch. I should know them by heart. They are Master Series, much like the A9S Master Series. Again, a weird choice to have those panels be Master Series at that size. I'm happy. The A9S was amazing. I had it here for some time, courtesy of Value Electronics. I had that for 6 months, 4 to 6 months, I believe I had it. I'll link the video of the A9S so you know what to expect from that amazing small form factor. But it is a Master Series at that size. So you have your A80, your A90, and then you have the A95K, which is really the star of CES for both Sony and for Samsung with their Qd-Oleds, quantum dot OLEDs, blue panel, vibrant, focusing with a pure white, very bright, less burn-in, all the promises there, much wider color gamut. We'll talk about that as well. So that is the entire lineup, pretty much from top to bottom. And now what I'm really excited about, we're going to start with the Z9K and the X95K. Seeing them go to mini LED is interesting. I guess that they would anyway. Now, Sony's not new to micro LED or mini LED. They just haven't had them for consumers. So we have them here. And primarily what I saw last year, going back to last year, was the Z9J, absolutely amazing. Same with the X95. The problem was, especially with the X95, they came out so late in the year. They both look stunning, both beautiful panels, the way they're designed, but they are rather thick. Being full array, they just seemed more thick than a lot of other panels, especially from Samsung, that are bezel-less and very thin. Now, I know that's not important to many of you, but I will tell you, to the average person walking into a store, that's really what sells. They see the front bezel, and then they look to the size, to the side of the panel, and seeing the X95 be so thick, and then see the Z9J be so thick, it really, I think it really stunted those panels in regards to aesthetics. So they're moving to mini LED, and the help of mini LED is many more zones within a small area, better light control. Now, personally, for me, I didn't see mini LED in the way many others did. For me, mini LED's promise was to eliminate blooming altogether. I didn't want to see a lot of it. You had mini LED Apple iPads that had a ton of blooming. The TVs from last year still had blooming, though they were improved in Samsung with an update. Their algorithm did improve. But if we're going to go mini LED, I want to see a much better black level. I want to see haloing and any kind of blooming. Want that very limited, even off angle. That's what I'm looking for from mini LED. But my guess is the reason to go that way is being realistic. It's a buzzword. It's a technology, and it's going to be thin. That's really what they're going to want to focus on, is get those panels looking more sleek, more bezel-less, and more aesthetically pleasing for anybody that wants to put them in their home, especially at these very high price points. Z9K is 8K. It is the standalone flagship of the entire lineup. The A90J carries over, which is what I'm happy about. The Z9K is 8K. Hopefully it will have the ability to show 8K videos out of the box on YouTube. They'll have that ability, which is so important, to be able to see some 8K content, because there isn't much. The big news, though, for that lineup is the backlight master drive. The backlight master drive, to have that back, it has not been present since the Z9G, which was a few years ago. It was 8K only, no backlight master drive since the Sony Z9D. The Z9D and 940E, which didn't have the backlight master drive, but the black levels from the Z9D and again the 940E, to me were better than most modern LEDs from the last few years. Very little blooming, if any. They were absolutely stunning, but the backlight master drive is extremely expensive. To see that back here is amazing. I'm excited that it's back. The local dimming from that system is phenomenal. But seeing that on the X95K is amazing. It makes the X95K a true 4K flagship. It immediately elevates that panel and makes it something to covet because it'll be somewhat affordable at that 85-inch size. You'll have an 85-inch, a 75-inch, and a 65-inch. Unfortunately, unlike, or I should say just like last year, which was a damn shame, is to not have a 55-inch variant. You have many people where 55-inch is still the sweet spot in terms of space and affordability. To not have that again this year, I think Sony does hurt, not themselves, but the consumer, as 55-inch again is performance and its availability in regards to finance. So having the backlit master drive on those two panels, very exciting, cannot wait. The Z9K looks incredible. We're looking at probably 3,000 plus nits after calibration, which is very exciting. But it also brings me to my first not like. I do not like two Master Series back to back. I do not like where you had the Z9J from last year, which was very expensive. Again, it came out very late in the year. So the competing Samsung QN900A came out so much earlier and is a few thousand cheaper. To have the Z9J still be as expensive as it is, you are, when you buy Z9Js or A90Js or A9G Master Series, what you want and what you're paying for is that badge. And you're paying for a panel which will be top dog in Sony's lineup for at least 2 years. They're getting away from that this year. To go from the Z9J to the Z9K and bring back the Master Drive is a little bit of a kick in the stomach to people that have the Z9J. I don't think you should feel that way if you're somebody that has the Z9J. They're absolutely amazing. And that's the tech therapy part about these shows. CES, anything like that, is to make sure that when you're listening to me or anyone else and you're watching this, is to not get too crazy with the excitement to where you start to dislike what you already have. Especially if you're somebody that has a Z9J. They're amazing, but I don't like that Sony did this with another Master Series and brought back the backlight master drive. I'd rather see you do that another year later. Let those that have the Z9J have a year. I don't feel that way as much with the A90J Master Series as it is coming over. Now, we don't have any real clarification yet if maybe later in the year they'll turn that into like an A90K in regards to, right now the A90K is the 42, 48 inch. They may start labeling the larger sizes instead of A90J. They may turn into A90Ks as well. But A90J owners, your Master Series carries over at those sizes. Now, many of you wish that they had a 77-inch A90J. I know they don't. The A90J, you have to go 83, which is very, very expensive. But this is where I go into the A80K. 80K has a 77-inch, has the smaller sizes as well. I'd like to see glossy screens throughout. I didn't like that last year, having the different screens from the 55, 65, and then 77 had the glossy. I want that to be more uniform this year. Didn't love that last year. I also would love to see an 83-inch A80K, because right now you have a 83-inch C1, which is behind me, and it's more affordable. And that happens again here this year with the smaller A90K. They're Master Series at 42 and 48 inches, meaning they're going to be very expensive at that size. I'd rather see an A80K down there at that size, because LG, like they did with the C1, will have their largest panels be more affordable. This year, LG will have the G2 at 83 inches, but by having it at the 83 inch at C1 last year, they made their affordable, most large OLED go against the Master Series OLED. Right away, people thought, oh, I really want the A90J, but the C1 only costs this. At the time, I believe it was $3,000 less. So I'd like to see Sony do their smaller sizes and their largest OLEDs still be in that 80K range, which will give you more choices and more affordable. So you have the 80K carrying over. I would like to see an 83-inch version. We don't have that, as I just mentioned. The A90K having the smaller 42 and 48 inches, that is very coveted for many people to have these monitor-type OLEDs. Just know that when the A9S Master Series released a few years ago at 48 inches, and even the C1's smaller panel basically costs more than a 55-inch. You are going to pay more in some regards to the form factor. And with a Master Series, you are going to pay more for the fact that it's a Master Series, the build quality, the sound quality. It's going to be a lot of money to pay to have something like that as a monitor, but I'm glad that they're offering it, especially the 42-inch size for those of you that want a large monitor. No problems there, other than I wish it was an A80K, or at least you had that option for people to be able to afford them. I would love to see some of that. Now, the A95K, which is the Qd-Oled, as we mentioned, quantum dot OLED technology. It's got a blue filter, got blue behind me. It allows pure white, which is so important. It will be brighter in a much, much wider color gamut. That is very, very exciting. I know many of you are amped up. It's a Samsung panel. Samsung's will release hopefully this year. It'll be towards the end of the year. Hopefully Sony's will have theirs out sooner. When they have it, I promise at Value Electronics, we will have the, which one? The A95K at 55 or 65, whichever one comes first, we'll have that go against the A90J from last year and this year. We'll do like a mini shootout. We'll see how the Qd-Oled really performs. They look phenomenal. They sound phenomenal. But we have to be very careful, guys, with CES. As we mentioned, be mindful of what you have. Don't dislike what you have. Don't get caught up in, oh man, I got to get rid of my OLED now. With all the marketing that we see, and I saw this with the Z9K, and the Qd-Oleds, they put them next to what they call conventional TVs that look like old IPS panels. That is a ton of marketing. So I am very excited, but I'm telling you to just chill a little bit. Don't get so excited that you can't function and enjoy your display or even buy one this year. Why I say that is you're going to see them late in the year. They're going to be 55 inches and 65 inches, which makes them not an option for me. They're also going to be ultra expensive at that size. They look amazing. The design on the Sony has a bezel or a stand in the back. You can flip it front and back. It looks gorgeous. But the reason I'm not as excited is that it's going to still be far away. 2023 or the beginning 2023 for Samsung. Here we are in January talking about that period. And the Sony panel should be out sooner, still later in the year. You're going to pay a ton of money for that bleeding edge technology. They will be very small for many of us. I'd rather see them release those at a larger size to be able to at least say, hey, this is why it's so expensive. It's 77 or it's 83 inches. This is why they cost so much. And then the next year, drop them down to smaller, more affordable sizes. Instead, they're going super high-end, super expensive, and super small. So I'm slowing my roll on that a bit. But I am very excited. There still will be a burn-in fear for that. That's not going to change with these. But what you're really going to see is, again, the ability to show pure white with this blue panel. Now, I always wonder, though, when we get into that, are we going to have, like the Evo panel, a pink tint or a bluish tint? Who knows? But again, as I mentioned, like CES, like E3 gaming, you want to see these panels before we get too much into the marketing. Even the quantum dots, I'll put up a frame of it here, shows an LED is like 1 pixel, and then it shows a bunch of mini LEDs. That is all marketing. I want to see how that looks in person, and that's what I'll be able to bring you again with Value Electronics this year. Bring you real hands-on footage in the home, in their store, against last year's A90J Master Series. I love what they've done here by having the Qd-Oled come in. I don't like that it kind of kicks out the legs of the A90J from last year. These aren't Master Series. They're going to be their own separate thing. But again, having them smack dab in the middle of the lineup at 55 and 65 and being probably the most expensive panels of the group, I'm figuring they're going to be as expensive as the Z9K, to be honest. So that is my first real big kind of criticism with that lineup is, bringing all that over and having the Master Series butt up against each other. I don't love that from the Z9K and Z9J. The the QD lineup, as I mentioned, as excited as I am, slow it down a little bit. It is still very far away and very, very expensive. Now, what I say about Bleeding Edge, there's a time where you spend that money to be first. It's all the time. I feel like with Qd-Oled, you'll be spending that money to be first to only have much larger panels, cheaper the following year. So I rather just observe that, as many of you will, and look for that battle against the A90J. But I think that it's a great step. It's the only place to go for OLEDs. Other than the heatsink, there's the only place to go with OLEDs is to be brighter and they're even more thin, but that's really the only place to go. There's really nowhere else to go in regards to OLEDs. Back to the Z9K, my biggest criticism again for Sony is let Master Series breathe a little bit. Let people have that 2 years so they can really feel like, hey, I have a Master Series. A9G owners carried that for like 3 years. They were happy they had a Master Series. Now, I really do feel like you have to take care of your customers, and I know it's a sensitive thing, but I feel like when you buy a Master Series, that's really what you're buying. You're buying their top of the line, their best looking, best sounding. But the reason you'll spend a couple thousand more is you're almost guaranteed to have 2 years of exclusivity. Again, back to the A80K, I'd rather see an 83-inch version of that because LG is knocking out all sizes with their different OLEDs, their small ones, their large ones. They're going to have, again, an 83-inch C2. They'll have a G2 at 83 inches. That was the problem with last year's G1. Made no sense that they didn't have a gallery panel at 83. I personally think Sony buying panels from LG at the time, I think LG allowed them to have the 83-inch for 1 year. That is my guess. And now they're going to have a G2 with a heatsink. Good chance you'll see that one in here replacing the C1 that I have here. But the panel I am most excited about going back to LEDs is the X95 and the Z9K. The Z9K, I don't have a lot of use for 8K myself. I think it's not needed at all, but like Sony's lineup, if you do want the best possible version of their panel, you're going to have to go with the Z9K. Last year, the best possible LED was the Z9J, then the X95. The X95K is not going to be a 4K version of their X90 or their Z9K. So for me, I'd want the top of the line Z9K 85, not because it's 8K, because it'll be the best panel they have. The X95 having the master drive is a huge, huge upgrade having that. But again, that bothers me that last year's did not have the backlight master drive. I feel like, again, being more sensitive to it, having the last year's Z9J not have a master drive. Then you had the ZAH, which was also phenomenal, which was overlooked because it was kind of like the AAH at that time. So you went from the Z9G to a ZAH to the Z9G to the ZAH to the Z9J, which many people couldn't even see because they weren't really in stores. And they came out so late to another Master Series, which will be out sooner than later. I don't love that. I don't love that because people buying those very high-end panels, if you're watching this right now, you're not going to feel great about it, especially now that the Master Drive is back. What I do absolutely love, though, is that the X95 will have the Master Drive. I want to see that. That might be the 4K flagship to beat this year. Love the X95J, but seeing that here, some of you had issues with 85-inch X95 having that grid pattern. So it'll be good to see the backlight master drive on a mini LED. That's the key. Mini LED, backlight master drive. That's what I'm most excited about with that lineup. Now, in closing, obviously the biggest disappointment is the lack of VRR support other than the PS5. You saw in their presser was all PS5, all PS5, all PS5. Yes, the PS5 does operate amazingly with the Sony lineup and does have a form of VRR, auto low latency mode, 4K 120. It has all that. But the biggest thing that Sony, or the biggest mistake Sony made, was the promise to people going back to the 900H that they would deliver a variable refresh rate update. Then delivering it so much later, whether it halves the resolution in regards to 4K 120 on some panels, or it removes the backlight. To me, I'd rather you not even offer it. Just come right out and say, look, it's not going to be available if you have an Xbox Series X or a PC. To me, is it a really big deal? It's not, honestly. It's a big deal because they promised it. That's my biggest issue with what Sony's done with the HDMI 2.1. You're hearing much less conversation in regards to VRR. And the reason why I think you're hearing less of that is many of us that really game and use the LGs, this is a C1 behind me at 83 inches, VRR is off half the time. Sometimes it behaves like black frame insertion. You can see a little bit of fluttering. I noticed that a lot on Halo. But even in my Call of Duty games and my Battlefield games, I come to realize that VRR is disabled a lot more than it is enabled. So I don't think it's personally a big deal. It wouldn't keep me from buying a Sony this year. So I've myself cooled off on VRR as well as Dolby Vision gaming. Now, I know that the Sony's, many of you are disappointed, has the same SoC, same HDMI number, same capabilities. I do believe they will be full 48. Hopefully that helps them with Dolby Vision gaming. But now, having Dolby Vision gaming for over a year now, I don't care about that either. I have not seen anything from Dolby Vision gaming that makes me say I have to have it. So to me, as much as I dislike that misleading, I do feel for them, though they promised it, it was half-hearted. I don't think they think it's necessary. They don't think it's a big deal, and they see that here. They're still promising an update for VRR, but I didn't hear really anything in regards to Xbox or PC, just running it in tandem with the PS5. So do I think you guys should care? If I could tell you honestly, for you guys that have the 900H or any of the even if you have 950s and TVs before there was the HDMI 2.1, you're not really missing anything as far as I can tell. I do run VRR here and there. A lot of times it's off. It's one of those things that you wish you had until you have it and realize, damn, am I really chasing this? And I think Sony's approach this year is, sorry, it's not really our focus. Our focus is picture quality. So I don't give them a pass, but I think it's less important. It should be less important to us. It's not going to determine this year like it did last year for me. I went with the C1 simply because it had all the gaming features I needed. The A90J was much more expensive, but had they been the same price, I still would have chose the C1 because of the gaming features. If I had to do that again, I probably would go with the A90J just for the overall picture quality, though I love my C1. I'm not putting it down, but I'm saying that is less important to me, someone who uses it every single day. They will have a low input lag, and they will work well as Sony panels do with PC and Xbox. I have not noticed a difference between the two when using Sony TVs with the Series X. It's very responsive. So overall, I'm very happy with the Sony lineup. I think the Qd-Oleds are going to be amazing for us to sit back and watch. I would not chase one. It's very exciting to see OLED take that next step. The Z9K and the X95K are the ones to really keep your eye on. Mini LED backlight master drive. X90K is going to be the everyone model. It's got all the sizes as well as a 55-inch. I thought the X90J last year was very underrated. I feel it's a very good panel. It got beat up crazily beat up. I had it, I filmed it, I enjoyed it. Many of you have it and enjoyed it. You'll see a carryover, I believe, this year. The problem with the X90J is it came out last year early and it was on an island by itself. It was expensive for what it was. With no X95 standing beside it, it was kind of paralyzed in that area. It couldn't lower the price. Now it's very affordable. Expect the X90K to be out close to the X95, and also it'll be much more affordable, and that'll be the one many of you will focus on. And that'll be the safe, mid-entry, high-level one to look at. But the real backlight master drive look is something, or look, the technology with that will be something that we'll all be focused on. I cannot wait. I will say though, the X95 at 85 and those larger sizes, if it keeps that blooming down between mini LED and the backlight master drive, that should be the killer. It's what I should have said in the beginning of this video. The most exciting part for me is not the quantum dot OLED. It is the backlight master drive coupled with mini LED. That combination should decimate all. There should be no blooming, no problems. That should be what, again, beats every other, even the mini LEDs out there. To have the backlight master drive should really make a huge difference in regards to blooming. All right, guys, I believe we covered everything. Only thing I say I would change is have more options and sizes for the A80K. Give me an 83-inch 80K. Give me the 42 and 48-inch A80K. Give me more value there instead of having, as we had last year, 83-inch only Master Series and Master Series small TVs. I like the A90J Master Series carrying over. I just want more respect paid to Master Series people that purchase those panels. Throw them a bone. Let them have more space to breathe. The lack of HDMI 2.1 discussion is disappointing, but all in all, guys, honestly, I don't think it matters. I've changed my stance on that. Again, these consoles have VSync built in. You won't be seeing any real screen tearing or any issues. Just focus on picture quality. You'll be absolutely fine. They did break that promise in a degree, so I don't give them a pass. But Sony's lineup, things I love, things I really like, things I'm excited about. And in the end, a Qd-Oled is going to be awesome. But don't let that distract from what you have. It is very far away, and it will be very, very expensive. All right, guys, I'm Brian at Whisper Status 74. Thank you so much for watching. Love you guys.